I'd like to call this evening's meeting of Tacoma Public School Board to order. And as we begin, let us stand and do a flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, President Ushka.
Present.
Director Cobb. Here. Director Vial.
Here.
And should the record reflect that Director Hines and Director Winskill are excused?
Yes, it should. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the roll call. Can I have a motion for adoption of the agenda, please?
I will move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. The next item on the agenda is item number 5, which is the recognition of staff, students, and community. 5.1, proclaiming July as Parks and Recreation Month in Tacoma Public Schools.
Good evening, President Ushka and members of the board. My name is Catherine McCarthy, and I'm filling in tonight for our Executive Director of Communications. It is the recommendation of our Executive Director of Communications that the Board of Directors proclaim July 2017 as Parks and Recreation Month in Tacoma Public Schools.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion? I will so move.
Second.
Is there any comments or discussion about proclaiming July Parks and Recreation Month?
Just that I think we have one of the best parks systems in the U.S., and I think it's appropriate that we do this.
And I would second that and say the partnerships that we've developed with parks are probably exemplary throughout the United States, and it's all about making sure that we get the best ends for every single citizen in Tacoma, and I'm proud to be a part of it. All that said, all those in favor of the proclamation indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 3-0.
All right, so now I'm going to read you the full proclamation.
Thank you.
Whereas Metro Parks and Tacoma Public Schools work diligently to align our resources to help positively transform our community and the lives of those who live here. And whereas the long-standing partnership between Tacoma Public Schools and Metro Parks has helped maximize public benefits derived from our community's gyms, sports fields, swimming pools, and learning spaces through collaboration and teamwork in the management and shared use of public assets. Whereas our partnership has made possible the establishment of the Science and Math Institute in Point Defiance Park, and we will celebrate the opening of the new Environmental Learning Center later this year to support student learning and environmental education in our community. And whereas a collaboration between Metro Parks Tacoma, Tacoma Public Schools, and the Boys and Girls Club of South Puget Sound and the YMCA launched a successful new elementary sports program throughout the community this past year. And whereas parks and recreation activities provide valuable year-round opportunities for students to grow and develop new skills outside of school hours. Whereas Metro Parks will host free events and celebrations that will serve our students and provide memorable time for families throughout our community to share in, including guided beach and nature walks, ethnic fest, Shakespeare in the Park, summer bashes, outdoor cinema, and so much throughout the summer. Whereas Metro Parks was named last month as the gold medal finalist for the highest honor awarded in their industry by the National Recreation and Park Association. Now, therefore, the Tacoma Public School Board and Board of Directors do hereby proclaim July 2017 as Parks and Recreation Month in Tacoma Public Schools and encourage our staff and students and families to celebrate by visiting and enjoying one of the more than 80 parks operated by our partners and friends at Metro Parks Tacoma. All right. And here now I would like to introduce the Parks Commissioner and Board President Andrea Smith, who is here to accept the proclamation on behalf of Metro Parks Tacoma.
Hi, President Ushka and members of the school board. As president of the park board, it's my privilege to represent Metro Parks as you take several actions today that reflect well on our joint partnerships. First, thank you for your staff's hard work on the ground leases for the Environmental Learning Center and the Eastside Community Center. This is precisely the type of good government collaboration that our citizens should expect from local governments. Simply put, the school and park districts each have land that the other can use for public good. Through these lease agreements before you today, you will be in an even better position to teach students in the living laboratory that is Point Defiance Park, and we will be able to enrich their lives at the new community center we are building on the campus of First Creek Middle School. It is truly a partnership that sets a national standard. Second, we appreciate the annual interlocal agreement that supports specialized recreation. This program serves some of our most vulnerable members of our community, and we are tremendously proud of the positive impacts that has on students and families. Through this partnership, we continue to help your students as they transition to living and engaging in the community. And finally, thank you for the thoughtful proclamation about Parks and Recreation Month. As your proclamation stated, our shared commitment to collaboration between our agencies is truly helping to transform our community, and that is reflected in the fact that the Park District is one of the 4 finalists for the National Gold Medal Award, which, as you heard, is the highest in the parks and recreation industry. You should know that Tacoma Public Schools helped us with that recognition. Clearly, gold medal judges value the unique partnership and the creative collaboration between our agencies. So that is why I'd like to take a brief moment to recognize your communication staff. Dan Vopel and his team were instrumental in helping tell the story of our partnership. Thanks to the creative talents of Casey Madison, we created a video that poignantly conveys our impact the partnership has on the lives of those we serve. So again, on behalf of the entire Metro Parks organization, we appreciate the school district's visionary leadership, whether it be through the shared use and development of public assets or jointly designing programs that strengthen families and advance the well-being of our youth. Thank you for your formal actions that you are taking today, as well as the ongoing enthusiastic partnerships to make our community a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. President Smith, the honor is all ours. Any other comments? Wonderful, thank you.
Madam President, I just want to thank our school board and then the parks commissioners personally. The staff, a lot of folks at home may not realize the vision that you provide, the marching orders that you provide, the work that you do in small groups as well as large groups on some sometimes some pretty difficult, challenging conversations. And your never wavering commitment to how do we get to yes, and at the same time maintain the integrity of our fiduciary responsibilities, our missions and values have propelled us to today, for sure, and propelled us, really, I think, set the stage for a lot more to come. So I know that we were meeting today for a few hours. I know teams have meetings scheduled throughout the summer, and so we're excited to keep on carrying your vision forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay. Next is item number 6, which is members of the public that are wishing to address the board. We school board members encourage public participation, and your input is absolutely appreciated. If you'd like to address the school board, please follow these steps. Complete a citizen's request to speak card, which is located at the back of the auditorium. Submit the card to the school board secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Cards submitted after the public comment period has ended won't be considered during that session. The superintendent, or the deputy superintendent in this case, will call your name when it's your turn to address the board. Please speak into the microphone, and you'll have up to 3 minutes to share your comments. There is a timer up there, and at 1 minute you'll get a warning, and at 30 seconds, you'll get a 1 minute warning, and the next time your 3 minutes is up. So, thank you.
Excuse me. First tonight we have Janine Nist, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name, from the Browns Point, to talk about the new Browns Point Elementary School.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. My name is Jeannie Nist, and I'm a parent of 2 Browns Point Elementary students. I'm also an active member of the Design Advisory Committee for the new school. Over the past 2 months, the district has held a series of community meetings in Browns Point about the new school and has made design changes that address some of the concerns raised by parents and staff. We appreciate the district's attention to our input and to the solutions offered thus far. The issue that continues to be of concern is building capacity. It is my understanding from the Department of Planning and Construction that the permitting for the new school includes 2 alternate bid classrooms. I'm here tonight to urge you to fund these 2 additional classrooms. Without the 2 classrooms, the current design proposal is inadequate to meet the needs of our growing community. I continue to have concerns about how the district is calculating building capacity for the new building. Any new school needs adequate space for general education classrooms in addition to specialized programs and functions such as special education, LRC, learning lab, and meeting the needs of our gifted students. Also, since the school is projected to serve the community for 50 years, there needs to be room for growth. Last meeting, questions were raised about whether the data used by the district is specific to our neighborhood. I have not yet seen any data specific to the population trends within the Browns Point Elementary School boundaries. Our community strongly feels that we are growing rapidly and that our needs need to be addressed so the school will last for the next 50 years. Solutions such as changing school boundaries or eliminating choice in options seem short-sighted and do not account for capacity limits at the 2 other elementary schools in Northeast Tacoma. We hope you will seriously consider our capacity concerns and take action to fund the 2 additional classrooms so we can be certain the building will meet the needs of the community it is designed to serve for the next 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lacey O'Connell. Also speaking on the new Browns Point Elementary.
Hello, good evening. My name is Lacey O'Connell, and I'm the parent of 2 students at Browns Point Elementary, and I'm also here tonight to respectfully request that the school board fund the additional classrooms at Browns Point Elementary. I understand the board is expected to decide in September whether to fund the 2 additional classrooms, and I worry that the board may not have received meaningful input with enough time to consider before making such an important decision. This could have been avoided altogether had Tacoma Public Schools been transparent and shared the changes in a timely manner. I signed up for electronic updates at the PTA meeting last year when the initial design was presented, and I received an update in July of 2016 and nothing more until May of 2017, when I was notified at 9 p.m. that 2 community meetings on the subject were scheduled at the same time on the same day in 2 different locations to share the final plans. It is because Tacoma Public Schools did not communicate with us until May of 2017 that you've been faced with messages and public commentary at such a late stage. One of the alternatives offered to constructing the 2 classrooms was to convert the Learning Lab into a classroom, that it's a programming decision whether to keep the Learning Lab. I understand that this would make the new Browns Point Elementary the only new school without a Learning Lab. Our PTA has funded a number of programs to subsidize the district's budget constraints, including an art docent program and a monthly science module that brings art and science enrichment to each student at no cost to the district. I've attended 3 meetings on the project, and at all 3, the Learning Lab, the Learning Resource Center, and the Special Education Classroom were each counted as a homeroom for 25 students when calculating the student capacity. Only homerooms should be counted when calculating the capacity. Those other rooms are not homerooms, and those children come from somewhere and need a seat in a classroom, as well as that space for the additional learning. And I also do want to thank the Department of Planning and Construction for making the adjustments that have been made so far. What's concerning to me now is the email response I received from Alicia Laver today that contradicts the information I received at a June 12th small group meeting. 31 days ago, Rob Sawatsky stated that his team, which includes Ms. Laver, was recommending to the board that it approve the funding for 550 students. He stated that at 500 capacity, we would be at a 97% capacity by the 2025-26 school year, which is 8 years from now. Today, I was told that the building is set for 500 students. We will be at 81 capacity if this year's current enrollment numbers hold true for the 2018-2019 school year, and I wonder what changed in 31 days. This message is inconsistent, and it is an example of the difficulties we've had with communicating with TPS. The current design plan lists 19 classrooms, not including the Learning Lab, Learning Resource Center, and Special Education. 19 times 25 is 475. It's misleading to claim the school will accommodate a base capacity of 500 students. It seems irresponsible to build a school that is expected to be at 97% capacity 8 years from now. It doesn't make sense to build a brand new school only to lose the Learning Lab and move into portables in less than a decade when the school is supposed to serve the community for the next 50 years. Please hear our concerns and act upon the issue of capacity by funding the 2 additional classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, we have Ms. Liz Sawyer speaking on the new Browns Point Elementary School.
Good evening. To start, I always like praise. I really enjoyed the community meeting I attended with Rob regarding the Browns Point project. Not only do I recognize that it took time and effort for the district to provide those, I received a personal response from him that was very meaningful. I received personal and action-oriented response from Alicia, to the point that I was invited to a meeting with her today to really talk face-to-face more about this project. I'm here today to put a face to the emails that I've sent each of you more than once, not just in the recent months, but over the close to 20 years I've been a parent, volunteer, business owner at not just Browns Point Elementary, but Crescent Heights, Meeker, and I have financially provided support and volunteer hours at 4 other elementary schools within this district, outside of Northeast Tacoma. I'm standing here to say silence is a tricky thing. When you do not respond, the sender controls the narrative of why you aren't responding. The story that's repeatedly told on the sidelines across Northeast Tacoma is you don't care, you don't listen, and you don't respond. I know that's not true. You wouldn't be in that job and those roles if you didn't care about the students of Tacoma. I get that. I'm just speaking up about the fact that I have sent emails about rats in a building, serious concerns regarding the capacity issues of Browns Point Elementary, with long, detailed explanations why, questions about ineffective leadership in your Northeast Tacoma schools, praise, serious, wonderful praise about teachers and programs, as well as concerns over the years. Crickets. No response. Who is the person to talk to? What is a timeline to expect a responsive decision? When would you like parents to show up and tell you why they care about this capacity issue? Simply even a thank you for being a concerned parent. I appreciate the time and energy it took you to write me an email. So, as we move forward, just remember that even if we don't agree, even if you don't have an answer, even though I might not like your answer, being heard builds trust and understanding. Being heard makes me want to continue to be involved and financially support this district. And most importantly, this capacity issue is not just a Browns Point Elementary parent issue. It is a concern across the entire Northeast Tacoma area. It's a unique pocket of your district, and it's a serious concern. Please read my email.
Thank you. That is all the comments for this evening.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item number 7, which is the superintendent's report. Is there a superintendent's report?
There is no superintendent's report this evening.
Okay, so then we're going to go ahead to item number 8, which is the consent agenda. The consent agenda approves many items that are the things that make sure that operations continue to take place throughout the district. There's a lot of items here, and I'm going to ask for a motion so that we can pass them all at once, but I want to make sure that people know that we have gotten these items in advance and had a chance to ask questions and review them and items like that without going over them one by one in the meeting. That being said, may I have a motion to pass the consent agenda?
I will move to adopt a consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion to adopt's been passed and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item number 9 brings us to policy matters, and there are none tonight, so we'll move on to the quarterly financial update that are found. Do we have a quarterly financial update tonight? No? Okay. So you can find monthly financial statements on the district website at tacomaschools.org/finance/pages/financial-reports. If you have challenges finding that, let us know. Item number 11 is curriculum and instruction. There's no items there. And now we're moving on to business matters in items number 12. Item number 12.1 is the approval of contract with Fairfax Hospital doing business as Northwest School of Innovative Learning.
So tonight you're going to see a series of annual potential action items that come up to you annually, and it's our way of trying to get ahead of them. Some of them, as we go through, are preemptive measures where we may sign contracts or propose contracts to you in an effort in case population rises or decreases, that we're able to respond in a timely manner. So tonight is the first of those. So the Deputy Superintendent, on behalf of the Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services, recommends that the Board of Directors approve the interlocal agreement with Fairfax Hospital DBA Northwest Soil for the 2017-18 school year. Funding source special education.
I will move adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 3-0. Item 12.2 is the approval of Head Start fiscal year 2017 COLA application grant number 10CH0194.
The Deputy Superintendent, on behalf of the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, recommends the Board of Directors approve the submission of Head Start FY17 COLA application grant.
Move adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 3-0. Item 12.3 is the approval of Head Start fiscal year 2018 continuation grant 10CH0194.
The Deputy Superintendent, on behalf of the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, recommends that the Board of Directors approve the submission of the annual Head Start FY18 continuation grant.
Move adoption.
Second.
Item's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
One question.
Vice President Cobb.
In looking at the budget, the travel amount seemed like a lot to me, but I think I just don't have context for what travel is typically in Head Start. I was just wondering if someone could say a little bit about the travel budget and what that typically is used for.
Yeah, Deanna's.
Come on up to the podium, please.
Oh.
Yep.
Just for clarification, there's travel usually in two separate budgets, one within the training budget, which is to send people for long distance training, but then there's travel within the regular operating budget, and that is specifically to pay for mileage for when staff are going to home visits or when staff are going from site to site, since we're at 20 locations throughout the district.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Any further questions?
Nope.
Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 3-0. Item 12.4 is the approval of Homeless Student Stability Program grant proposal to OSPI and the Washington State Department of Commerce.
The Deputy Superintendent, on behalf of the Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services, recommends the Board of Directors approve the submission of the Homeless Student Stability Program grant proposal in the amount of $283,607 to OSPI and Commerce, and, if funded, approve the expenditure of funds according to the accepted guidelines. Funding source: Washington State Office of Superintendent Public Instruction and Department of Commerce.
Questions or comments from the board?
I think I better
Director
move
Biala.
adoption first.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
It's
Good idea.
okay. Move adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Director Vial, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't.
Director Cobb?
Nope, no questions.
Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I know you're in a
All
hurry.
those
It's hot in here.
All those opposed, motion passes 3-0. Thank you. Item 12.5 is the approval of the planning grant proposal entitled Social, Emotional, and Academic Development, SEAD, a Student Success Digital Portfolio to the Stewart Foundation.
The Deputy Superintendent recommends that the Board of Directors approve the submission of the SEAD planning grant in the amount of $50,000 to the Stewart Foundation, and if awarded, approve the expenditures of funds according to the accepted guidelines. Funding source: Stewart Foundation.
Move adoption.
Second.
The item's been moved and seconded. Are there questions or comments from the board?
Just have a
Director
quick.
Cobb. Oh.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Director Viala.
Dr. Garcia, could you basically explain what this is?
You bet. So
Is that what you were going to ask? Okay.
We were invited, we've been in numerous conversations with the Stewart Foundation. They've watched us, they've come up and visited us, and they have asked us what's next with our benchmarking system, with our Tacoma Whole Child system, and said we'd really like to investigate an idea of students having digital badges to match our benchmarks, to match social emotional learning skills. And they have invited us to put together a plan to develop that framework for students. And so what this grant does is allows us to begin the planning of what that work would look like with our new DART team, Data Analytics and Research team, and with curriculum instruction, with this idea that we would move towards having students earn digital badges for their accomplishments in social emotional learning and academic development.
Awesome. Sounds like an amazing opportunity for us.
Further questions?
No, thank you.
Seeing none, all those who approve, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, seeing none, motion passes 3-0. Item 12.6 is the approval of the interlocal agreement for Metro Parks Tacoma community-based transition for 2017 through 2019.
All right, 12.6, the Deputy Superintendent on behalf of the Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services recommends that the Board of Directors approve the interlocal agreement with Metro Parks Tacoma for the 2017-18 school year, funding source special education.
Move adoption.
Second.
Excuse me.
Item's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I just have a comment. I
Director Vial.
have had the community-based transition program as one of the things that I oversee as we give that. And I just want to give the great kudos to Metro Parks for the number of kids that they employ in the internship program and the number of kids that wind up actually working for Metro Parks, and particularly the greenhouse and their skills that they learn that for a number of our young people, it's a life changer. So this is another one of those partnerships that we talk about, but it's just a really moving thing when you go to their little graduation at the end of the year and the kids get up and Metro Parks talks about, and then they say, and so is going to work for Metro Parks in the greenhouse. So again, thank you, Metro Parks, for making a difference in our kids' lives.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 3-0. This brings us to item 12.7, which is the approval of Maxim Healthcare Services, Inc., doing business as Maxim Staffing Solutions, addendum number 3 for para support.
The Deputy Superintendent, on behalf of the Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services, recommends that the Board of Directors approve the addendum, number 3, for Maxim Healthcare Services, Inc., DBA Maxim Staffing Solutions for the 2017-18 school year, funding source special education.
Move adoption.
Second.
Item's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from the board?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 3-0. Item 12.8 is the approval of Indian Education Formula Grant application to the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Indian Education.
The Assistant Superintendent of K-12 Support recommends that the Board of Directors approve submission of the Indian Education Formula Grant application in the amount of $174,149 to the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Indian Education, and a funded approved expenditure of funds according to accepted guidelines. Funding source, U.S. Department of Education, Office of Indian Education.
Move adoption.
Second.
The item's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Director Cobb.
How much do the activities included in this summary change from year to year? Or what's the process like for developing the program plan?
I think that David Scythe, who's the coordinator, works very closely with Manon Hodge in developing programs. Like, for instance, they are accessing our online program, Edgenuity, to access that for credit retrieval. They have tutoring programs. I think that every year they monitor those activities, and the ones that are showing success, they continue, and the ones that aren't, they don't. So this grant is for a number of things, also for summer programs. There's cultural sessions. I think that David does a really good job of finding out what's current out there and brings that in, and has a pretty vibrant program.
In addition, there's a parent community advisory committee that also provides guidance to make sure that that's relevant, and not only culturally relevant, but relevant to our community as well.
Director, yeah.
I was just going to comment. I've been close to that program just for my own interest since I came on the board. I know President Ushka knows that. And David also works closely with the tribe, and they have been very kind and generous over the last 2 or 3 years in giving us additional funds. And one of the great events that he put together is the powwow. It honors our graduates with TCC, and hopefully next year we'll all have an opportunity to be there. I've been there every year. Events like that, the Parent Advisory Committee does an awful lot in terms of determining, along with David, what is going to be included in that. I know one of the things that I was concerned about when I first came on the board was the graduation rate, and we've worked really hard on that, and as you know, that needle has really moved, and David has really focused on that, along with Tony. He's been instrumental in working with David on doing that. So I would put our Indian Ed program right now up with about anybody's across the country just for what we're achieving and outreach and trying to get more and more of our Native kids to graduate. Also, curriculum, the summer program, I've had a chance to, not this summer, but last couple of summers, it's been over at Blix, and it's a really good combination of learning and cultural concepts for Native kids. So that's maybe a little additional information.
Thank you. Director Cobb.
I had a chance to attend the graduation ceremony last year, and so my sense was that there's this real strong community among the students, and that the program is really well developed and engaging. So my question was not really about the program; it was more about what's articulated in the summary, because I don't know that it really. And this is just one aspect; it's just one grant, one small snapshot. So it can't be the whole description of everything that happens in the program. But I just wondered if, in the future, there's some opportunity to make this come to life just a little bit more, so that it's clearer all the great things that are happening in the
Absolutely.
program.
It's a great idea. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Well said.
Another one of our great programs we need to highlight.
We need a list. We absolutely do.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 3-0. Next, we're on item 12.9, which is the approval of the interagency agreement between the University of Washington and Tacoma School District Number 10.
The Deputy Superintendent recommends the Board of Directors approve the interagency agreement in the amount of $300,000 between the University of Washington and Tacoma School District Number 10 for the period of July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2020.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying...
Whoops, Andrea.
I'm sorry. Quick question.
Vice President Kopp.
In the description, it says all schools in the district. Is that an expansion from where we are currently?
Yes, our plan is over the next 3 years is to expand into more of the secondary schools and ultimately, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, if I might comment, about a month and a half ago, we did ask the superintendent and the deputy superintendent to come back with us with a plan. So I suspect that's reflected in this. Is that correct?
There's part of the work plan of this is to develop that plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 3-0. That concludes item number 12 and brings us to item number 13, known as other business. Item number 13.1 is the approval of the 2016-2017 fixed asset inventory reconciliation for all district locations. And I'm going to try my best not to make any forklift comments.
The Chief Financial Officer recommends that the Board of Directors approve the write-offs.
Sorry.
Pardon me?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
We're refocused. We apologize.
Yeah,
No, it's
we're being
fine.
smart alecky up here.
That's
so.
all right. Perfectly.
Thank you.
There you go.
The Chief Financial Officer recommends that the Board of Directors approve the write-off of the assets identified as missing on the 2016-17 inventory when the books are closed for the 2016-17 fiscal year. The actual amount of the write-off will be reported to the Board by January of 2018. Further, it is recommended that the principals and staff at locations achieving perfect inventories be commended for their excellent stewardship of district property.
Move approval.
Second.
The item's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments?
Just one comment. Since I came on this board and Steve DeMelt and his people, it's been just amazing progress on the amount that we have reduced that down to almost an insignificant number. And I know Steve's not going to be happy till it's zero. So Steve, thank you. Your work doesn't go unnoticed.
Thank you.
And I would just comment that I definitely appreciate the recommendation that we acknowledge those that have excellent stewardship and perfect inventories. Considering all the things that happen in a school and all the items that are listed as property, to know where they all are at the beginning of the year and the end of the year is actually a kind of big deal. And so I commend them for that. Any further questions or comments? That said, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, seeing none, motion passes 3-0. Item number 13.2, approval of a resolution 2026 to amend lease agreements with Metro Parks Tacoma.
The General Counsel recommends the adoption of a resolution that allows, number one, modification to the existing ground leases for the Environmental Learning Center at Point Defiance and the East Side Community Center at First Creek Middle School to allow Metro Parks to finance construction of the East Side Community Center. And secondly, authorizing the superintendent to execute necessary documents to accomplish Metro Parks' request.
Move adoption.
Second.
The item's been moved and seconded. Are there questions or comments from the board? Do we need any further elaboration from
I don't necessarily want to elaborate, but I want to thank our chief counsel and our team and our outside counsels and the planning and construction team and Metro Parks. A lot of work has been done on this over the course of an extended period of time. And so I just want to thank the staff. And once again, this all comes from the leadership of the commissioners and the board to say, how do we make this work and how do we do it responsible? And today's a culmination of that. So thank you all.
I would second that. Just the ability for people to work together to make this done will be a real game changer across the city. And that's the sort of thing that makes generational change. That's that children growing up 10 years from now will have no concept of the lack of resources that people growing up now have in some of our communities. And so I want to make sure that that understanding of how much difference it's going to make in people's lives is acknowledged, along with my gratitude, because it's more important than just a job that we do every day, and I appreciate the commitment that everybody's shown. Further questions or comments? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, seeing none, motion passes 3-0. Item number 13.3 is the approval of bid acceptance for Soda 9th and Broadway Phase 2 Tenant Improvements Project.
The interim chief operating officer recommends the board of directors accept the bid for 9th and Broadway Phase 2 tenant improvement projects from Calvo's Construction LLC in the amount of $1,372,000, not including sales tax. Funding source, General Fund 2017-18 fiscal year.
Move adoption.
Second.
Item's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the board?
I just have one question. Is this about the end of the money that we need to spend on this building to get it operational?
Should be.
This will put us in the third floor and allow us to have this SOTA students in there.
That's the question I want answered.
Yep, absolutely. And so
Okay.
what it will not do is provide improvements to the first and second floor. And the original plan and vision was that is that we would have those the second floor be more of a community space. So we would partner with other folks to develop it in a fashion for tenant improvements. So that hasn't been approached or broached yet, and so that is there. The bottom floor would be an opportunity for retail or something else, and so those tenant improvements likely would come from those leases as well. But this should, unforeseen, as you know, there may be some conditions that come up, but we're planning that this will make it operational, for the SOTA students. And then this would also put us in a place probably for realistically at the earliest a mid-year move.
Other question that's tangent to this. When does the lease expire at the old courthouse?
We are in the process of signing another lease for 1 year, which would allow us to carry in there. We do have a potential, and stop me if I'm not supposed to say all these things yet, but we are arranging it so that if we need to opt out of the lease early, we're working with the landlord on an option to do so.
Okay, that's
But
what
we're currently in the process of looking at a one-year lease.
Okay, thank you, because I assumed that this isn't going to be ready in fall, and if my memory serves me correctly, that was a 2-year lease that was to run out, so we'll just hopefully conclude a lease that allows us to leave when we need to. Is that kind of correct?
That allows some flexibility on the
Thank
landlord
you.
and ours
Yeah,
in there.
okay,
So, but
correct.
this lease would be for at a maximum 1 year.
Okay, super, thank you. Thank you, President.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 3-0. Item 13.4 is the approval of purchase of digital scoreboards for Stadium and Lincoln Bowls.
The Chief Financial Officer recommends that the Board of Directors authorize the superintendent to purchase 2 digital scoreboards from Dektronics and use their assistance in obtaining advertising partnerships with appropriate local and national companies.
Move adoption.
Second.
Item's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Vice President Cobb.
Have we entered into an agreement with Daktronics like this before?
Yes, in 2011, we purchased one at Mount Tacoma High School.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So these are very similar.
I have a quick question too. As I recall, when we lit up the one at Mount Tacoma, there were concerns about brightness to some extent. Have we had those kind of dialogues with neighbors, or do we know where that's going to project to?
I don't have any information on that, but I can certainly check for you and get back to you on that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Too bright type of thing with the neighbors?
When we implemented the Mount Tacoma sign, it was in the midst of the larger conversation about digital billboards throughout the city of Tacoma.
Yeah, okay.
And so it was reviewed with those concerns in mind.
Okay.
I don't recall the outcome being that it was necessarily disruptive to neighborhoods, but we did make a commitment to review that.
I'll double check for you, get back to you.
Vice President Cobb.
In the Mount Tacoma agreement, were we able to realize the revenues that we expected to?
Yes.
in advertising?
So over the 6 years, we received $360,000, which covered the initial cost, and then we received $160,000 over and above that for extracurricular activities.
Okay, thank you.
So.
As I recall, it was an initiative to help fund middle school sports.
I was just going to say that.
And so it
yes.
was pretty exciting, and I see former director Jim Dugan in the background there, and I think he was there when we first put it in. It was pretty exciting to realize that we now have elementary sports programs throughout the district, when just a few years ago we didn't even have middle school. So great ways to figure out how to partner and get things done. Are there any further questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 3-0. Item 13.6 is the ratification of the 2017-2021 collective bargaining agreement between Tacoma School District Number 10 and the membership of the Pierce County, Washington Building and Construction Trades Council.
Oops. Did we jump one?
I think you missed
Did we?
13.5.
13.5?
Forgive me. Actually, next on the agenda is
We can
item
go ahead and do
13.
13.6 if you're.
I don't care, just to make sure we don't forget the 13.5.
I will hop back to 13.5, I pledge.
Okay, go
Okay.
ahead.
13.6, the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources recommends that the Board of Directors ratify the collective bargaining agreement between Tacoma School District Number 10 and the membership of the Pierce County, Washington Building and Construction Trades Council.
Move adoption.
Second.
Item's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Just congratulations to HR department and our bargaining team and to the construction trades for coming up with an agreement.
Thank you. We're very happy and proud of this agreement, so thank you.
Should be.
Excellent. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 3-0. Hopping backwards to item 13.5, the approval of the third addendum to the Educational Cooperative Agreement with Spokane Public Schools.
Just wanted to remind the board that this is the agreement we talked about at our last meeting with TVL, and that we were going to go for one more year with TVL and then phase it out and move straight to Edgenuity. And this is that program. So I just wanted to remind you about that. The Assistant Superintendent of K-12 Support, on behalf of the Executive Director of Secondary Education, recommends that the Board of Directors approve the third addendum to the Educational Cooperative Agreement between Spokane Public Schools and Tacoma Public Schools. Funding source is a Willie Stewart Academy.
Move adoption.
Second.
The item's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 3-0. Item 13.7, adoption of resolution number 2024, authorizing the surplus of the Geodrone property.
The interim chief operating officer recommends to the board of directors adopt resolution 2024 and approve surplus of Geodrome property.
Move adoption.
Second.
The item's been moved and seconded. Are there questions or comments from the board? Vice President Cobb.
In the resolution, it was stated that it's been determined that the property is not going to be required for the district's long-range planning of capital facilities. I don't know, I think that conversation might have predated my time on the board. I might not have been around for that meeting. But can you describe to me a little bit about that process or how that determination was made?
Yeah, so we had some discussions with the board. This strip of property is a small strip that sits below the Geodrone right next to the I-5. And so we did an analysis. What could be the potential opportunities there? What is safe for visibility, for opportunities? And it was deemed that it's really, it is not a viable option for us to continue to add educational programming for where its location is. So Geodrone is here, and correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, and this property sits right here. And so there was this opportunity to potentially look at how do we go ahead and surplus that and see if there's opportunities to bring revenue back to support other programming.
Okay.
For some reason, I have it in my head that there's some sort of a store going in there. Is that accurate?
I think that there's parking opportunities.
That's what I
there.
thought it was, parking for, I don't know, Bon Marche's, not Bon Marche, Macy's thing or
The
whatever.
furniture store that's
Our
there.
technical processes is we're not into that yet. We're looking at what are there's been
Offer made, I think, or something.
I think there's been people that have explored interest, and so we looked at what is the viability for the educational programming, and so there isn't a store there, but there may be the opportunity to provide parking to some of the other stores that are in the area.
Certainly, I guess from my purview on the board, we definitely always want to know in neighborhoods what kind of impact we're going to have to those sales. Way back when with the exciting transition of the Rogers property before either one of us were here. Are part of what propelled me to this service in the first place. And so it is important to me to know that it's something that's not going to have an adverse effect on that neighborhood. It's also, I could see it being a parking lot. I've actually walked through that neighborhood fairly recently.
It wouldn't fit being a parking lot, just given the proximity to the freeway.
The size and the freeway and the angle.
It's kind of a screwy piece of property, really, if you look at the, you know what I mean, for development. It seems like it would lend itself primarily to something like that.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Vice President Cobb.
Does this property currently cost us to maintain? Are we investing in it as it sits?
Just when it needs to be cut, the property will need to be maintained and cut right now, right? So we have some maintenance on that property right now.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 3-0. Next is item number 14, which is the report to the board. 14.1 is the planning and construction update.
Good evening. Robert Swansky and myself and Alicia Lawver, we've put some work into a presentation tonight to give you some updates on the capital projects. And I'll turn it over to Rob Swansky from here.
Good evening. Pardon me. We wanted to come to you tonight with a number of items. I'm going to have to run fairly quickly through them and give an opportunity for questions at the end. Oops. Is this turned on?
Just as they're setting up, one of the things that you've asked for from staff in the past is just to bring you a regular and serious series of conversations. And so tonight's update is not designed to be all-inclusive, but more of where are we at and where have we been in the last couple of weeks. And then we plan on bringing you back some more updates and more conversations. And so today is an update, and I know the board will plan on being engaged at a later date in some deeper conversations.
Okay. We'll have them advance slides from the back.
Great.
Okay, here we go. So the first thing I wanted to update you on, you've seen this chart before, and this is just a reminder about the volatility of the market that we are currently in. We have seen costs jump anywhere from $306 a square foot to $510 a square foot. We've seen an average in the K-12 market right now of $420 to $440 a square foot. Mary Lyon came in at the low end of that at $414 a square foot. And Browns Point right now is estimated to be somewhere between $414 and $440 a square foot. And so what this represents across the market in the Puget Sound over 17 different projects over the last few months is a high degree of volatility, costs that are about $120 a square foot more than we've ever seen before. So we are in unprecedented times. Changes in the construction market since the bond planning in 2012 have impacted budget projections, including unprecedented increases in market costs. So a change, of course, is necessary in order to respond to these current market increases, using taxpayers' funds wisely and fulfill our 2013 bond promises to the community. With current trends showing continuing escalating costs, we need to move forward in a timely but thoughtful manner. We're going to head to the next slide. The main point in this slide is that labor and materials supply will have a hard time keeping up with the demand in the foreseeable future. We took a look around the Puget Sound and around Western Washington, and what you see in this slide is really our competition over the next, what we've seen between 2011 and 2017, and what we anticipate coming in bond passages in 2018 and 2019. You will notice a high spike in 2016, and you notice a spike that we also saw in 2014. And the following years, in 2015, Wilson High School bid, and we felt the results of that spike in bonds the years before. And in 2016, we saw a spike, and now have seen a spike in prices in the market. And so we believe that with almost between $15 and $17 billion in bonds passing between 2011 and 2019, that we have a lot of competition and need to think about how we move forward in a very thoughtful manner. The next slide. So with the Mary Lyon project right now, our total project cost estimate right now is about $34 million. That's up from an anticipated budget in 2012 that it would come in at $29 million. And we saw that on bid day and overall across the project. Moving to our next slide. With Browns Point, we're still in the estimating stages, but we estimate that given the market conditions, this project will come in between $34 and $36 million as a total project cost. And the original estimate on this was a $31 million cost. So with Browns Point being a general contractor construction management job, we have the contractor on board already. And there will be 3 phases of bidding. The first bidding happened July 10th, which was site work, site concrete, and elevators. Phase 2 will happen on August 29th, which is structures and masonry. And Phase 3 will happen September 27th, 29th, and October 3rd, which will include 18 bidding packages, 6 each day. And then in October, we will come to you as the board with a gross maximum price, GMP, for your consideration. And I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on that process in our next slide. So as a quick review, with both Stewart and McCarver, these were GCCM, General Contractor Construction Management jobs, where we bring on board during schematic design as a team member the contractor, looking for cost efficiencies along the way with the intent of heading off potential excess site and building costs and helping reduce errors and omissions in the documents that can impact construction cost and schedule at a later date. The contractor bids out the work to subcontractors and then develops a gross maximum price. In that process, we've often done what we call mini-max, the maximum allowable construction cost, but we've done them in bid phases so that we can start work early and avoid excess costs. In the case of Browns Point, the idea of getting the site work done early before the bad weather hits and we start going vertical with the construction as to avoid soil import and export that are moisture-sensitive soils. Thus the reason for having early bid packages. I did want to just review a couple of things. I mentioned the maximum allowable construction cost, the MAC, which are hard costs. Those are the costs that are bid out to the contractor. In addition, we have our soft costs. And our soft costs really look at architectural and engineering fees, sales tax, salaries for employees, consultant fees, furniture and equipment, technology, those kinds of things. And then you take our hard costs, you take our soft costs, you add them together, and you have your total project cost. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment as well. Next slide, please. So, application to the Browns Point timeline. So Skanska was approved as the general contractor for the Browns Point Elementary project on June 23rd of 16. The general contractor construction management form of contracting was selected due in part to the complexity and logistics involved in an occupied site, keeping the kids on campus while separated from the construction. So the total hard cost, the MAC, will be a total of the 3 mini-MAC bid packages that the contractor is soliciting. The board will receive these for consideration between July and October. The multiple bid packages are designed to help reduce cost escalation due to impacts on soil and weather delays in this case specifically. The gross maximum price is expected to be presented to the board for review in October. Next slide. So our next steps. We have a benefit of approving bid phase number 1 and moving forward with the project. That gives us the ability to start the site work when the permit is approved in late August or early September, and then better mitigate the wet weather concerns that we have. So one of the things that we're asking for here is a second board meeting over the next couple of weeks before August 1st so that we can get this work moving forward. We did want to come to you tonight, though, give you kind of a heads up and a reminder of the process and just a reminder of where we are in the Browns Point process before we asked you to approve moving the project forward. Our risks of taking no action or not approving the project, we could delay the current start date of September 5th due to procurement issues. We increased the potential wet weather impacts on the project, including increased construction time, the likelihood of about an $800,000 to $1 million cost for importing and exporting of soils due to wet weather, and the potential increased escalation costs of delaying the project due to weather. So future board considerations and options. When we look at the Browns Point project and we look at all of the projects, Bernie and Grant and all of the other ones, they all impact each other and how we make good on the promises that we made to voters in 2013. And so we want to come to you in early August as well in a study session to talk about alternative timelines for project completion, alternative delivery methods, and also the possibility of adapting existing designs that we have and other cost-saving measures that we've started to talk about as ideas. So moving to the next slide, I wanted to just review what are some of those cost savings measures that we're already working on and that we want to get into detail with you in August. So Director Vial, you've expressed concerns about the soft costs and accountability. We've heard you, and we want to share some of the steps that we're taking to help control project costs. So value engineering. This is really a conversation about what's nice to have and what do we need to have. And so with all of our projects, we've gone down through line by line with each of the design firms and looked at major building systems. We've looked at materiality. We've looked at all kinds of things to try and reduce cost in this market that is so inflated. Next slide, please. We're also we're paying close attention to our architectural and engineering fees and what are basic and what are additional services. We're negotiating fees. We start with the Department of Enterprise Services guidelines, and we negotiate from there based on the dollar amount of each project and the complexity of the project. The basic fees are negotiated based on the assigned MAC, the maximum allowable construction cost. And it's only increased for the architect if additional design services are rendered after the project bids. So we've looked back at our fees over the past 4 years and found that we're fairly consistent in the fees that have been negotiated with our design firms. We want to come to you in a future board meeting to have you consider approving the negotiated fees for architectural services for Bernie and Grant from McGranahan Architects. Next slide. Another cost savings measure, we've come to you before and talked about GCCM like tonight. We're also exploring design build. We're going in front of the Project Review Committee on July 27th, and if successful, we'll be bringing this delivery method as an option for the Bose project as well. What these two delivery methods do for us for sure is time. They buy us time, and time is not on our side with escalating costs. Both methods give us transparency. It means line by line we can see all of the items that are bid and all of the markups that the contractors are putting on the line items. In the low bid, lump sum bidding, there is no transparency. In an early August study session, we'd like to propose some ideas for your consideration on alternative delivery. Next slide, please. Also, we want to talk about proposed alternative and accelerated schedules. This again is about time. How can we accelerate projects and get them built sooner rather than later to avoid the escalating costs? So we're looking for ways to save that way, looking at possibly shifting the order of projects that are most costly and moving more quickly on the design. We want to come to you again in early August and look at these ideas. Next slide, please. We're also working with an internal capital fund auditor and with purchasing. We're asking for honest feedback on procedures. We're learning. We're finding out ways that we can be more efficient and procure in a better way in order to improve and save dollars. Some examples of this: recently we had our internal auditors do an audit on the Stewart Middle School project, and we found ways that we can do better, and so we appreciate that help. We've taken flooring, which in the past has been ordered through purchasing co-ops, and we're now putting it out to competitive bidding so that we have more competition. We've done the same with playgrounds. We've done the same with audiovisual procurement, and right now our purchasing department is working on an RFP to look at bulk savings at the remainder of the project so that we can, in one RFP, take care of what we're going to be doing with audiovisual in the future and have some guaranteed pricing. Next slide, please. We're also realizing and digging into the fact that we have become more efficient in the designs of our buildings. The average square foot per student in Washington State per the OSPI cost study from February says that it's about 115 square feet per student. Traditionally, in our district, we've had about 119 square foot per student, and right now we hover somewhere on our current designs between 107 and 119. So we're right at that average, right at that median compared with the state. Our elementary school buildings are hovering between 53,000 and 60,000 square feet for 450 to 550 students, versus in the past where we've been between 60 and 65,000 square feet. And if you look at other districts are up about 80,000 square feet. So we've become very efficient in our designs.
And without losing learning opportunities. And so there's a challenge sometimes when we look at comparative sites and to determine, is that translating in increased effective opportunities and for students. So Director Swadsky and the team have been looking at not losing the integrity of the guiding principles in the design and structures. And so as you continue to look at this opportunities, we will continue to try to maintain your guiding principles prior to bringing your recommendations.
Yeah. I guess my closing comment on efficient design of buildings is we're excited. Arlington's going to be opening, and we look forward to touring you that school. It's the epitome of multiple use of space, and so look forward to touring that. So I'm finished. Any questions I could take?
Director Dial.
I appreciate this presentation about looking at how we can be more efficient. Because as we know, we've got a promise we made to the voters to finish all those schools. But one thing I am still concerned about is I'd like to see us be very tough on any future change orders that we see come through, about making sure that they really are necessary. I've seen that in the past on projects that I've been involved in, and I would hope that that will be an area that we will focus on. I quite frankly have seen that capital audit as being on the Audit and Finance Committee, so I would hope that's an area that we will focus hard on as we complete these projects. You mentioned design build, and you mentioned Bose. Is that the only school that we might be doing design build with?
Well, no district right now in the state has ever done a school using design build.
I'm aware of that.
And so we were going to the PRC, the Project Review Committee, to ask permission to do one, and if successful, there would be an opportunity to go back and do more that way. We feel we're an innovation zone, and to give you an opportunity to look at different delivery methods and make a decision on what would be the best way to proceed. We want to have that in our back pocket if it's appropriate.
Well, I'm a fan of design build because the Union Station would not have gotten done had we not done design build on that, nor would have the Tacoma Dome or the theater district. So it does allow us to adjust as we go through the process of the building, and from a cost and efficiency standpoint, and yet still come out at the end with some pretty magnificent buildings.
Yeah, we're excited about the opportunity. And just to respond, we're hearing you about change orders as well, and that's one of the things we want to talk with the board about at the study session, if we can have that in August.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'll do that Director Cobb.
I just have a couple clarifying questions. On the slide where you showed our competition in terms of the dollar amount of bonds passed, how wide was your net? Where were you looking?
So we looked
what districts are?
Great question. So we looked at Puget Sound and we looked at Western Washington, and so largely the net was cast. The bulk of those bonds, I should say, is really in the Puget Sound, and it does go as far as Vancouver. It is statewide, but the 18 and 19 bonds, there are some assumptions we're making about who will go out on a bond, and talking to people in the industry and other districts about when they might go. So there are some assumptions in there. The 11 through 17 data covers the whole state and what was actually passed.
Okay. And then my other question was towards the end on your efficient design of buildings. You mentioned that the state's average square foot per student was about 115. Do you have that in front of you? Did they break that down by general education class students with disabilities, and kind of the early grades? And were we on target or kind of in the range at all of those different in all of those different categories?
I have looked at portions of the cost study. I have not read in depth through it. I can do that, and I can get you the cost study. It's actually on OSPI's site. It's downloadable as a PDF, but I could also get a hard copy to you. But yeah, it's quite in depth.
I'm mainly interested in the K-3 kind of classroom space and how we're doing there, especially with expanding early learning programs and just lowering class sizes in the early grades. I'm just curious how we're doing in our building with those early grades and where we're at in relation to other districts.
We'll get you that information.
Thank you.
Could you get it to all of us?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to acknowledge that we heard your request for 2 different meetings. We will work with the board and staff to make sure that we get some meetings on the calendar in short order, so that we can make sure that work is done in time.
Thank you.
Yep. Further questions or comments?
No, just thank you. Appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Okay.
Okay, next that brings us to item 15, which is board comments and reports. I am going to take the privilege of going first for a second, which doesn't mean that I won't round back. I have a signed proclamation for President Andrea Smith from the Parks Board, acknowledging the proclamation that we made at the beginning of the meeting, and I would like to make sure that I have an opportunity to present it.
Awesome.
President Smith, could you come forward? Director Vial, do you have comments?
Nope.
Okay. Director Cobb.
I just have one comment. Is it now or almost now when we do the redistribution of our schools to each of us? It's this time of year, right?
It is frequently this time of year, and I can work with Tanya to make sure that we get that done.
I just have one request, and this came from a person who works in one of our buildings. They ask that when we do the distribution of the schools that we consider adding Raymond Hall to that list. And I thought it was a great recommendation. So as we redistribute our schools for next year, I would request that we add Raymond Hall, and I'd be happy to take it in this first round. But others, if you want it, it's open. But I think that's a great recommendation, and we should consider
I
adding.
thought we had it on there at one time.
I don't recall having Raymond Hall on there, but I'll certainly work with the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. It is. It's good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
I don't think any of us would object to having it at all. I mean, it's great. You know, all the different sites now that we do have, like CBT and Willie Stewart. And,
It's just a simple recommendation that just probably
not
got
that hard.
I can do that.
We can do that by your authority.
Yeah, fantastic. I want to make a couple comments really quickly in response to those that have spoken about Browns Point. The board has absolutely heard your concerns now and over the years. Part of the challenge is that board members, unlike other elected offices, don't really have that much staff support. This is not to discount the fabulous work of our secretary, but there are 5 of us and there's 1 of her. So there's hundreds of emails that have come in regarding Northeast Tacoma. And we acknowledge that the residents of Northeast Tacoma are very committed to their schools, and we appreciate that very much. We certainly, and I think I can speak on behalf of the board, we certainly did not want to imply that we were not listening by not giving 5 different separate responses to each and every email. It was really a matter of trying to coordinate communication to make sure that we stay on the same path. I would like us in a study session to talk about communications and ways that we can address that better, because I think as a board and as a district, we've gone to great lengths to make sure that the community knows that they're being heard, and to bring the community in as partners in everything that we do. And I want to find a solution to that, because I don't want anybody to feel that way in Tacoma Public Schools for any reason.
Well, if I might make a comment,
Certainly.
I would appreciate when people send us emails that they would sign their names.
It is challenging. I can tell you that I generally don't respond to emails that are without
Well,
names.
neither-
or they're from,
neither do I. And-
titled locations, because I don't know where they're going. But from individual persons, I do try to. But again, when there's hundreds of them across the course of a short period of time, it's just a matter of time and effort to get it done. Certainly no disrespect meant whatsoever.
No, I like comment, not at all. And in some cases, some of the emails that we receive are beyond the purview of what we as board members can do. And so they fall within the superintendent. I know I sent one to Dr. Garcia today, and Mr. Story tells me it's already under being fixed, issue with garbage on the field at Wilson. So many times you may not hear back from us directly, but it doesn't mean that they have not been forward for action, and action will be taken, and that's normally what happens. So, because I can't call up Mr. Story and tell him I want that field cleaned up. So there are limitations on what we as board members can do. We are the policymakers, and Superintendent Santorno is the action person. So there are some very specific lines drawn in the RCW 28, which governs school board relationships with superintendents. So many times you may think we're not responding, but we really are, because we have forwarded it. And I usually personally try to say I have forwarded this for action, and if something doesn't happen, get back. But in a case like where we get a large number, as Director Eshka said, of emails, we feel that it's appropriate to have someone like Mrs. Lauer respond back in general on behalf of all of us, and that just saves us as most of us have other things up here, that we have other jobs and other things that we do, and we try to balance. But there's I have always believed in transparency in my whole entire elected career, and if people felt slighted, I feel bad about that, and I'm sorry.
The other thing that I want to acknowledge, I had a brief experience of getting to be a resident of Northeast Tacoma a few years ago when my house flooded, and that's where they housed my apartment. And so when we hear Northeast Tacoma people talk about feeling like they're in a different city, you certainly do feel like you're in another city. It's quite a distance to come across for something simple here on the main island, so to speak. So I want to acknowledge that I'm also empathetic to that inquiry. Recently, Councilman Toms also reached out to me on behalf of Northeast Tacoma regarding the schools and regarding tennis courts. And so that's a broader conversation I'd like to bring into study session, particularly in relationship to our partnership with Metro Parks, just to make sure that there's equity of programming in all areas of Tacoma, inclusive of Northeast Tacoma. And I'm sure that as we work to get to yes, we'll get it done. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how. So I appreciate that as well. I have no further comments. Are there any other further comments from the board?
Just one on that tennis court. I think that's an issue that goes across the city. I think you're going to, the west side of this school district feels an awful lot of times like, as you well know, Northeast Tacoma does with Fircrest, and there's a lack of tennis courts, I think, across the city, and that might be something we can.
I have actually heard concerns about tennis courts from just about every area of the city in the last 6 months, and not being a tennis fan, I didn't realize that there was the lack, so it's certainly worth the review. They just kind of quietly have disappeared. I mean, granted, I know I went to school when dinosaurs roamed the earth, but all the those dinosaurs played tennis, though, didn't they? Yes, they did, and all of
big
our
rackets.
Yes,
big rackets.
Big rackets. We had big rackets, but seriously, all of the junior high schools had tennis courts in those days. Now middle schools. So it just seems like as we built or changed, our tennis courts kind of shrunk the number of them. So I think the Lincoln issue that you had, stadium does not have courts. Part of that is just where do you put them on their sites, because their footprints aren't that large. But perhaps Metro Parks can work a solution and help us with getting to yes on how we can expand the use of tennis courts and get more kids involved in playing tennis, playing golf, sports that are
That is the
individual.
new expansion of our partnership with Metro Parks is tennis and golf this next year.
All right.
So there will be more courts needed.
Excellent. Great. Good ideas have a way of spreading themselves, so that's fantastic news.
Thank you for bringing that up.
If there's no further comments and seeing no further regular business before the board at a regularly scheduled meeting, I therefore declare this meeting adjourned.